This is the SF Productions Podcast Network.
It's a bird, it's a plane, it's a franchise.
From the Pop Culture Bunker, I'm Mindy.
And I'm Mark. You can check out our audio podcast, How I Got My Way Through E-Comics, on iTunes or on our website, sfpodcastnetwork.com. This is the second part of a two-part episode. It ran longer than we expected. So, we're talking again about the Superman movies, and we've already covered some of the earlier ones, so let's move on to the rest. Moving on to Superman 2, 1980. Richard Donner had already shot 75% of Superman 2 before being forced to go ahead and finish Superman 1, because they wanted to get it out. So it's, okay, stop working on 2, work on 1. He's then taken off the project because cost overruns and concerns with the producers and all this. He's replaced by Richard Lester, who was a second-line director on the first movie. Now, according to union rules, if you're going to be called a director of a movie, you have to shoot at least 51% of the film.
So that was a problem.
So he reshot a bunch of sequences. And so he was able to make it enough of it that, okay, it's his movie, it's not Richard Donner's movie anymore. Which resulted many years later in what was called the Richard Donner cut, which was provided via some of the DVDs that came out. And so you could get this special cut of Superman 2 with all the Richard Donner scenes put back in, which I think personally was actually a stronger movie with Richard Donner. Richard Lester was a little bit more on the comedy side, so there's a little bit more wacky sequences.
I don't really remember.
Well, this is the Kneel Before Zod movie. So, if you're trying to remember which one it is, Kneel Before Zod! Then we move on to Superman 3, 1983. More of an action comedy than an action movie. It's the last one where the Salkins were involved. Richard Pryor is brought in. Margot Kidder is in it, but has a very minimal role, and is then replaced by Annette O'Toole as Lana Lang. And of course, she later played Martha Kent on Smallville.
Woohoo!
So, it's a rather ridiculous storyline. The bad guy, Robert Vaughn, wants to control the world's weather and gets Gus, Richard Pryor, to make synthetic kryptonite. He's like this idiot savant who can do all these wonderful things. And it ends up splitting Superman into good and evil versions of himself, and they fight each other. At one point, you see the bad guys who are trying to attack Superman, who's coming to get them. You see them playing the Atari Superman game. It's not my favorite movie, certainly, but it is Citizen Kane compared to Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, 1987. Golan Globus's Canon Films produced it. The whole film looks very cheap. They got Christopher Reeve to return, but only if he could write it. So he's one of the co-writers in the movie. And you know that never goes well. So the whole storyline is based on this kid writes a letter to Superman saying, why can't you do something about all the problems with nuclear tensions around the world? And so Superman's decision is he goes in front of the UN and says, I'm going to remove the world's nuclear weapons.
Woohoo.
And they all cheer.
Yeah.
Instead of what they would really do.
Yes. Stay out of our backyard.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. The Daily Planet is bought out by this big conglomerate. There's a whole storyline about that. Gene Hackman is back as Luthor, and he now has this nuclear man that is the other villain.
Okay.
There's a fight that occurs on the moon. There's a kidnapped girl who at one point is way outside of Earth's atmosphere with no ill effects. Because Nuclear Man falls in love with her and flies her into space. And she's just like, yeah, whatever.
Okay.
No air, no atmosphere, whatever. There's at one point, Superman gets new powers like super repair vision on the Great Wall of China. He basically looks at the Great Wall of China and it repairs.
Okay. So this is why I never watched this
movie. It basically kills the franchise. And so that's Christopher Reeve's last involvement.
Now, there was a Supergirl movie, but
There was a
we're
Supergirl.
not going to talk about
right,
that one.
Right, which was even cheesier than
Yeah.
Quest for Peace. All right. So then there were a whole bunch of movies that were projected and developed that never made it to the screen. So they either were just concepts, or maybe scripts were written, maybe footage was actually shot, but they canned the concept. There was Superman Reborn in 1993. Doomsday was going to be the villain.
Was that after the Superman Dies comic?
Yes,
or?
it was right
Okay.
after that. So
Okay.
that they were going to try to
Well, if they really wanted to do that,
merchandise
they
that.
should have done that at the same time.
Right, right. There was Superman Lives, 1996. Kevin Smith wrote the script.
That would have been interesting, except for...
Nicolas Cage was Superman. And there's actual footage. You can find it on the net. It looks terrible. Absolutely horrible. It's like goth Superman. Ugh. There was a Batman versus Superman movie concept in 2004. McG was the director who makes these action movies. Both heroes' lives go sour. Apparently, Clark and Lois divorce, and something terrible happens to Bruce. He loses
Something
the Wayne
else
Empire.
terrible?
Yes, the Wayne Empire, and they end up fighting each other before they team up to fight the bad guy at the end. There was also Superman Flyby in 2004, where Superman is killed by other Kryptonians, but is then reborn. Kind of goes back, kind of like a Doomsday and the Kryptonian villains all in one movie.
Okay.
Josh Hartnett was going to be Superman. Scarlett Johansson was considered as Lois. The movies were never made, thank goodness, because that would have been really bad. That would have been terrible. Then you have, finally, a movie makes it through this whole process, and it's Superman Returns in 2006.
I remember you were so excited.
I was.
So excited.
Bryan Singer directed. He was a huge fan of Richard Donner. He basically made this movie into Superman 2.5.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of said, well, 3 and 4 didn't happen, but this is continuing the Superman 1 and 2 storyline.
Yes.
Brandon Routh was way too young for the part, and so was Kate Bosworth as Lois.
Oh, yeah.
It was like kids dressing up as,
Yeah.
as superheroes. It was terrible. Kevin Spacey as Luthor was really the best thing in the film, but he really couldn't overcome the super kid.
Yeah.
That Lois has a kid, and we figure out it's actually Superman's kid. There's a scene where Superman is flying by Lois's house and using his X-ray vision to play Super Stalker. It's weird. Luthor's goons at one point beat the crap out of a depowered Superman, which really was a terrible thing to watch.
Yeah.
There's some good scenes in it. There's a great sequence, which I think I've probably watched this scene about a half dozen times more than I've actually watched the movie. Is the scene with the plane and it's crashing and Superman comes in after he's been gone for years and he saves the day. That's a great scene. If the rest of the movie could have been anywhere near that, it would have been a great movie.
Well, I think it was really a mistake trying to make it continue the Donner films. They should have just, at that point, rebooted it entirely.
And it was so far away from the Donner movies, from Superman 2. I mean, you're talking about 1980 and going all the way to 2006.
Yeah.
There's, if you look into like the behind-the-scenes featurettes, they did sequences where he's flying, and they do the flying by he's in a airplane hangar instead of actually just like doing the classic he's on a table and I mean, or some version of that. It's like no, it has to look like he's really flying.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the new movie. We'll see how Henry Cavill does in the role. Of course, Christopher Nolan is involved. So I have very high hopes for that. Mm-hmm. Hopefully my high hopes will not be crushed.
Hopefully they won't make it too dark.
That's the big concern, because when you see the 400 trailers that have come out, it looks like a much darker movie. But it's also trying to be, I think, a more realistic movie, as realistic as you can be with Superman. I've also seen that there's going to be boatloads of product placement. At one point, there's a battle scene, and there's clearly a Sears in the background.
Brought to you by Sears.
Yes, and so you can now go to Sears and get your special comic book and all this. So there's going to be boatload of product placement. I'm also hoping that we don't see these obvious set pieces for battles. And what I mean by that is there's a scene where this whole set is built solely for the purpose of having a battle in it. I'd rather see something a little more organic, that they are somewhere, things happen, and then a battle occurs, instead of, okay, we'll be over here for the big battle scene and overly complicated things that people have to get through.
Yes.
Which is how modern movies are made, and annoys the heck out of me.
Yeah. So, I know that it's not going to happen in this movie, where, because Marvel is much better at this than DC. Do you think there'll ever be a Justice League movie?
Every indication is this movie has to do really well for a Justice League movie to be considered. And when I say really well, based on what we've seen in the past, it basically has to be the #1 movie the first weekend and continue to do well and make, Avengers money.
Right.
or Warner is going to go back into their shell and go, oh, no, we can't do that.
Because, with the Marvel movies, each movie seeds the next movie.
Right.
And I think that they might even do better, DC might, if they had that little seed for the next movie.
Right.
And you knew that there was some sort of other payoff coming from it. You might watch it more.
They certainly have the blueprint from Marvel. They could go and do a Flash movie and a Wonder Woman movie and maybe redo the Green Lantern movie and then do a Justice League movie.
And there's nothing wrong with redoing the Green Lantern movie because Marvel redid Hulk several times.
Sure, and none of the times was it enormously well received, but I think they got it as close to being right as possible the last time.
Well, in the Avengers, which was even a third Hulk, wasn't it? Mark Ruffalo wasn't Hulk in any of the movies. So.
Right, and Marvel doesn't expect every single movie to be a monster hit.
Yeah.
Thor did not make a lot of money.
And I really think sometimes that they spend too much money on these movies. You could not have the big epic battle scene.
Right.
And still have... a lot of us who are reading comics would rather see the relationship stuff and the witty banter and the,
and frankly, in Avengers, that's the better part of the movie. When they're bantering, in the lab, rather than blowing up stuff. Oh, well.
Just me.
Yeah.
And 90 million other people.
Right.
No explosions!
Well, a few explosions are fine, just not too many.
Okay, you can check out our audio podcast, How I Got My Wife to Read Comics, on iTunes or on our website, sfpodcastnetwork.com. From the Pop Culture Bunker, I'm Mindy.
And I'm Mark. Thanks for watching.
Bye.